Get ready to dive into the comic book realm, where heroes rise and villains take the helm. We're here to dissect the stories and the art. On source material, we tear the panels apart.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Source Material Comics Podcast. That over there is Mark Radlich. I'm Jesse Starch. We're getting into our fourth and final discussion on Alias, issues 22 through 28. We're finishing it out. Mark, we've gone through this. We're actually doing this whole series. Can you believe it?
All roads lead to the main villain of season 1 of Jessica Jones.
Yeah, which is Purple Man. Crazy stuff. Well, before we get there, we got issues 22 and 23, and I'll just throw this out here. Real simple stuff.
Alias issues 22 and 23. The Secret Origin of Jessica Jones. Parts 1 and 2. Writer, Brian Michael Bendis. Artist, Michael Gaydos. Letterer, Corey Petit. Colorist, Matthew Hollingsworth. 15 years ago, Jessica Campbell, a classmate of Peter Parker, witnessed him being teased and planned to ask him out. During a science exhibit, she was about to approach him when he was bitten by a radioactive spider. Following him, she nearly got hit by a truck, but was saved by a stranger. Later, at home, she was interrupted by her brother while fantasizing about the Human Torch. During a family trip to Disney World, their car crashed after colliding with a military convoy, spilling hazardous material onto Jessica and killing her family. Jessica awoke 6 months later in a hospital during a battle between Galactus and the Silver Surfer. Orphaned, she lived at the Moore House for Wayward Children before being adopted by the Jones family, who lived in her old neighborhood of Forest Hills. A year later, Jessica, now with the Jones family, returned to Midtown High School and was mocked by her classmates as a freak coma girl. After a confrontation with Flash Thompson, she stormed out and fled to the football bleachers, where Peter Parker tried to offer sympathy. Mistaking his intentions for pity, she ran away, and on her way home, she inadvertently began to fly, crashing into the Hudson River. Struggling to surface, she was saved by Thor. Later, with her adoptive father, she watched J. Jonah Jameson call Spider-Man a menace on TV and discussed how superhero image is the reason some are liked and some aren't. Testing her powers, she knocked down a tree and learned to control her flight. She then stopped a laundromat robbery by the Scorpion, impressing onlookers with her strength and lack of a costume.
The Secret Origin of Jessica Jones. It's a two-parter. We've got Jessica giving us kind of her basic origin story, much different than what we've had in this series so far, where, you know,
I love the artwork. So
yeah.
They have her. So because they want to get across that she was a contemporary of Peter Parker, they do the art style from the Amazing Fantasy 15.
Yeah, it's a beautiful
the 60s.
Mm-hmm. It's a great way of kind of throwing you back into that and giving you an idea of what that story is. But we also learn about Jessica and what happened to her and how she got her powers. It's pretty tragic.
Kind of like Titan. She was like fucking around in the back seat. Dad said, "Hey, knock it off back there," and proceeded to back to drive into a truck, and a container of some kind got into the car, and everyone died, and she survived. But that's how she gets her powers. And so let's start off life being guilty about having accidentally killed your family.
Yeah. Not only that,
never wanted.
School's not going great either. I mean, she's getting picked on by Flash Thompson, of course. He's giving her a hard time. But yeah, we learned that she was in the same class as Peter Parker, or at least same school.
Parker gave her the vapors, but she never had her opportunity.
There's a moment where she is just about to ask Peter out, and that is right before he gets bit by the radioactive spider. And of course, when that happens, that all fell apart. So, yeah, I mean, we kind of watched these two issues go down. She starts to learn how to use her powers a little bit. She starts to learn how to sort of fly. She gets involved, I think, at the very end with a robbery that's going wrong in a laundromat, I think, by Scorpion. Why the hell are you going to rob a laundromat? That's the last place. You need clothes?
No, it's because you break open the machine.
Okay, you took quarters.
Yeah.
Sounds heavy. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we get out of these two issues.
Alias issues 24 through 28. Purple. Parts 1 through 5. Writer, Brian Michael Bendis. Artist, Michael Gaydos, Mark Bagley, Art T-Bear, and Rick Mays. Letterer, Corey Petit. Colorist, Matthew Hollingsworth and Dean White. Jessica Jones is approached by Matt Murdock to help Lord Kevin Plunder find his missing saber-toothed tiger, Zabu, which she declines. Back at her office, she receives a message from Kim Rourke about finding a man named Kilgrave, which seems to affect her so much it causes her to vomit. Confronting Carol at Avengers Mansion about the referral, Jessica flees and encounters Scott Lang, who knows about Kilgrave, but she demands her boundaries respected. Visiting Rourke's home, Jessica learns about a massacre caused by Kilgrave and agrees to help the victims' families find closure. The next morning, Jessica wakes up at Luke Cage's apartment after calling him and then invading his home in a drunken stupor. She reveals her past with Kilgrave, who controlled her for 8 months, making her perform demeaning acts without physical rape, but mentally tormenting her. Under his influence, Jessica attacked the Scarlet Witch at Avengers Mansion, but came to her senses during the fight with Thor. The fight ends when she is punched hard enough, knocking her unconscious, putting her in a comatose state. During the coma, she is visited by Jean Grey of the X-Men, and she helps Jessica wake up. She recalls her recovery and rejection of a S.H.I.E.L.D. job offer. Determined to finish the investigation, Jessica visits Kilgrave's cell at the Raft with Clay Quartermain. Jessica questions Kilgrave at the Raft, who taunts her with claims of their existence in a comic book. Frustrated by his refusal to admit to murders, Jessica leaves. At Rourke's home, news breaks of a massive Raft breakout, including Kilgrave's escape. Rourke accuses Jessica of complicity. Jessica warns her mother and Carol before learning from Malcolm that suspicious calls have been made to her office. S.H.I.E.L.D. traces her location, prompting her to flee to Scott Lang's apartment, where she informs him of Kilgrave's escape. Jessica falls asleep and wakes to find Scott's dead body swarming with ants, believing it to be Kilgrave's doing. Jessica confronts Kilgrave, who reveals Scott is not actually dead, but manipulates her with hallucinations of her worst fears. On the street, Kilgrave incites violence, ordering everyone to kill their neighbor. Jessica experiences a vision of Jean Grey, who reminds her of a psychic defense trigger implanted in her mind. Empowered, Jessica turns on Kilgrave, beating him instead of killing a superhero as he commanded. In the aftermath, Scott reveals the details of the Raft escape, and Jessica admits she is 3 months pregnant with Luke Cage's baby. Later, Jessica informs Luke about her pregnancy and that the baby is his. Luke expresses his care for Jessica, and they decide to start a new chapter together, preparing to face their future as parents.
This is the one where I really enjoyed the artwork. By the way, this last series with the Purple Man, they have to have a new artist there. It is completely different.
Oh,
You're not doing kind of piles of laundry and mashed potato faces anymore. It is very crisp, clear. Again, it looked like something out of a Garth Ennis comic.
well,
That style.
if you're talking about, with the Purple Man, when we get in with those right there, I can tell you that I noticed that there is a very prominent 90s artist that's on the front, and that's Mark Bagley.
Okay.
If you read Spider-Man, we talked about.
I feel I recognize it somewhere.
You would know, but I can tell you that there's a couple things just to kind of throw this out here. We get the throwback art that happens in the Secret Origins of Jessica Jones and in the Purple Man comic. We get this throwback 90s art, but we get some very adult time stuff happening in there. At one point, she's fantasizing about the Human Torch, and she starts reaching down into her pants, to which her brother bursts into her room and interrupts that. And then, when we get into the Purple Man story, there is a situation where Mark Bagley, who I'm so used to seeing standard Comics of Code proved 90s art, all of a sudden is drawing 2 women in bed together while Jessica Jones stands there and is about taking her top down.
Where at the very end of their relationship, she's in pigtails and a mini skirt and fucking her shirt's open.
Right. It is not what I was used to with Mark Bagley, but I loved seeing it. So anyway, we got our first 2 issues, Secret Origin, and then we get into Purple, which is the basis of what I think the whole first season of Jessica Jones is about.
Yep. Season one alludes to what they talk about in the comic book. It's almost like continuous. What they show you in the comic, their relationship, they don't really show you that, if I remember correctly.
Right. You're the,
They allude to it a lot, though.
yeah, there's a couple things that they said she says she did for him. I think at one point she kills somebody.
Yeah.
There's definitely some differences here because apparently he didn't get her to kill anybody, but he had her under basically his thrall this whole time.
Well, so she talks about she's under the Purple Man spell for 8 months, and she basically just tortured her the whole time. She was a plaything for his amusement. He made her ache for him, and then he never gave her the satisfaction of any kind of physical relationship. And so he was just doing it just to fuck with her. And then at the end, he was so frustrated by superheroes and everything else. He's like, go kill Daredevil, who's not an Avenger, but go to Avengers Mansion anyway and go kill. And she gets there and she gets in a fight with the Avengers and they kick the fuck out of her.
I think that, I don't know if she's heading over there or she's just flying looking for Daredevil, and the Avengers land and she sees Scarlet Witch, who's red. And she's like, oh, there she is. There he is. And she goes down and fucking.
So under his spell that it was kind of like Dark Empire, where finally Luke acted out on the Emperor saying over and over and over again, kill. And he finally does it and then kills his clone or some shit like that. Or Leia kills the clone. I don't remember which. But it was that finally having to deal with this brain that has been taken over by somebody else and get it out of your system. Yeah, he was go to Avengers Mansion and kill Daredevil. There's a couple of problems with that. She goes there, and you're right, she sees Scarlet Witch. She's like, close enough, and she's red. And the Avengers do what the Avengers do. And she wakes up in the hospital, and that's how it all went down with the Purple Man. So the series picks up where Carnage actually fucking caused a prison breakout. And while he was out, there was a very meta thing with him going, like, if this is a comic.
Oh, it's extremely meta, which took me completely by surprise. There's a couple things that happen in this.
The first season of Doom Patrol, and now we get to the punchy part.
Right. I didn't know that about Purple Man. I don't know if that was just something for this series.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't happen in the television series, the Netflix series at all. So I didn't realize that we were going to get a situation where the Purple Man was going to be, I mean, he already knows what's going to happen in this comic. He's referring to the fact that he's doing this thing because he's being written to do so. And I was like, what is going on? I had no idea the Purple Man had all this like Deadpool powers to understand he's in a comic book. It all starts with Luke Cage and her, and she's finally going to confide in Luke Cage and tell him what happened. And he does. And she does. So she tells him about all of this crazy stuff that Purple Man had her do. The fact that it just continues to fuck with her head because she still doesn't know to this day when he tells you love me or want me, it's still in her head that she might want this guy, and she has to talk herself out of it sometimes, which
it sucks when you can't trust your own brain.
Exactly.
I like the way the comic basically takes mental illness and sort of makes it a physical thing to deal with, but in a very psychological, ethereal sense. That's what a lot of mentally ill people go through. It's changes in body chemistry, just fractures in how the brain's supposed to function, and you start believing things that just aren't true.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that. That whole last bit with Luke Cage, where she had alluded to she holds her belly early on in the comic. So she knows
she pukes at one time, and she's like, and you're like, I've seen this before.
I know where this is going. Not only does she finally tell somebody about, because through 28 issues, she hasn't said a word about the Purple Man. She won't talk about it. Whenever anyone asks her, why aren't you a superhero anymore? She's like, because I'm not. She never gets into it with anyone. Doesn't trust anybody. Finally, with everything that's after she Torillo marks the fucking refrigerator and just drives Luke Cage up every last wall, he's the one guy that she finally confides in. And oh, by the way, she's also having a baby.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the comic ends. They're like, all right, well, I guess we're going to off to a new adventure then. And because everything that we've read about Luke Cage and Jessica Jones has been post this. So we're probably going to go back and look at how it all began. Overall, the stuff with the Purple Man is probably the best stuff in the book. All of it's good for the most part. We talked in previous episodes of the show what I liked or didn't like. And 9 out of 10 things I liked. It was just I had quibbles here or there. The stuff with the Purple Man, I think Bendis had this laid out all along that we just needed to get there. I thought it was very satisfying. Because you're not reading this because you want to see big time superhero action. You're like, how does this man violated her in so many different ways, psychologically, emotionally, how does she fight back and take him down? How does she win in the end? And she does. And he goes back to prison or wherever they stick people like him.
I don't know if he's alive.
Yeah, it doesn't matter because the big victory here was her and Luke getting together.
Doesn't matter.
Page 1, that's where we started with her and Luke, and at the very end, that's where we end with her and Luke again. After this whole ride they've been on, separated, and at the end of the day, she found her person in Luke Cage. I was very happy with it. I said overall, I really enjoyed the Alias series. I'm glad we had a chance to talk about it. By the end of it, I didn't feel like, okay, well, I never want to talk about this again. This is something that over the course of recording almost over 2 hours of content, if I wasn't busy, I go back and revisit this character. I could revisit other books. I'm curious to see what Bendis did with the Pulse.
Yeah, same here.
I've enjoyed reading Alias with you.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get into plugs here, man.
Next up, all right, I'm at Mark Radulich on TikTok, MarkRadulich, and all of our video stuff is W2M Network on YouTube or go to our landing site. The audio is Radulich and Broadcasting Network, where you find Damn You Hollywood and TV Party and all of that.
Very good. Check out at SourceMattCast on Twitter. We are getting out of here. That's Mark. I'm Jesse. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
In the dark of night when the world is asleep, I find myself haunted by secrets I keep. A life once shattered, a soul torn apart by the man who stole my mind and my heart. Every whispered word, every twisted command left me broken and bound by his hand. But now I stand, though the scars still show, fighting to let those memories go. Oh, shadows of yesterday, please let me be free from the torment, the pain, the misery. I'm finding my strength, I'm reclaiming my light, one step at a time through the endless night. I see his face in the mirror's cold glass, a reminder of the horrors I can't let pass. But I won't be a prisoner, not anymore. I'll fight through the darkness, I'll break down that door. Every fear that he planted, every tear that I cried will not define me, I'll push them aside. With each rising sun, I feel my heart mend. This battle within me, I know it will end. Oh, shadows of yesterday, please let me be free from the torment, the pain, the misery. I'm finding my strength, I'm reclaiming my life, one step at a time through the endless night. There's a voice inside that's growing so strong, telling me I've been a fighter all along. And though the past is a part of who I am, this battle within me, I know it will end. Oh, shadows of yesterday, please let me be free from the torment, the pain, the misery. I'm finding my strength, I'm reclaiming my life, one step at a time through the endless night. So here's to tomorrow and the battles I've won, to the dawn that will break with the rise of the sun. I'm Jessica Jones, and this is my fight, to cast out the darkness and step into the light.
Stick around and learn some more about the Purple Man, as we cover some of the important history of Kilgrave in our little source material addendum. The Purple Man. First appearance in Daredevil issue 4 from August of 1964. Zebediah Kilgrave, better known as the Purple Man, began his life as a Soviet spy. His transformation occurred when he was doused in an experimental nerve gas during a failed mission at an American Army Ordnance Depot. The gas turned his skin permanently purple and imbued him with the ability to command the wills of others. Realizing the extent of his newfound powers, Kilgrave embarked on a criminal career, adopting the moniker Purple Man. His ability to manipulate others with mere suggestions made him a formidable adversary, and he quickly became notorious in the criminal underworld. Kilgrave's personal life was equally tumultuous. In Buffalo, New York, he encountered a woman named Melanie, whom he compelled to marry him using his powers. although he eventually released her from his control in the hopes of genuine affection. Melanie fled to Toronto, Canada, and later gave birth to their daughter, Kara. Kara, also known as the Purple Girl, inherited her father's powers and eventually joined the Canadian superhero team Alpha Flight. Despite this connection, Kilgrave rarely interacted with Kara, focusing instead on his criminal endeavors. Kilgrave possesses formidable powers centered around mind control via pheromones. His skin cells have been mutagenically altered to produce psychoactive chemicals that, when inhaled or absorbed through the skin, sap individuals' wills, making them completely subservient to his verbal suggestions. This ability allows Kilgrave to alter perceptions and compel actions, effectively commanding crowds of over 100 people at once. His influence is classified at power level 10 by Nick Fury's intelligence. While his power requires his verbal commands to be effective, the induced monomania renders victims unable to resist as long as they are within range of the psychoactive chemicals he exudes. In addition to his mind control abilities, Kilgrave possesses an accelerated healing factor. His body can recover rapidly from trauma and severe injuries, even entering a death-like state to heal. Notable instances include surviving the destruction of a psycho-prison by Nema and recovering from a forced suicide by his own children. Despite his physical vulnerabilities and poor fighting skills, Kilgrave's charisma enhances the effectiveness of his powers, allowing him to manipulate others to fight on his behalf. Kilgrave's powers, however, have notable weaknesses. The effects of his mind control diminish with time and distance, as victims regain their self-awareness once he is no longer present. Individuals with exceptional willpower, such as Captain America, Daredevil, Doctor Doom, and Kingpin, can resist his influence. Additionally, beings with different physiological traits, such as Wonder Man, non-breathing entities like robots, and certain telepaths, can also resist his powers. His mind control requires his victims to hear his commands, meaning that methods like earplugs or loud noises can effectively counteract his influence. These limitations highlight that while Kilgrave's powers are formidable, they are not insurmountable. The Purple Man's criminal activities brought him into frequent conflict with Daredevil. Using his powers to coerce individuals into committing crimes, Kilgrave sought to establish himself as a criminal mastermind. However, Daredevil's strong willpower allowed him to resist Kilgrave's influence, leading to multiple defeats and imprisonments for the Purple Man. Kilgrave's confrontations with Daredevil included coercing Maxwell Glenn into committing crimes and later causing Glenn's suicide. Despite these setbacks, Kilgrave continued to wield his powers to manipulate and control, moving between New York and San Francisco as he built and lost criminal empires. One of Kilgrave's most significant encounters was with Jessica Jones, then known as the superhero Jewel. The Purple Man held Jessica under his control for months, subjecting her to psychological torment and forcing her to act against her will. This traumatic experience left Jessica deeply scarred and contributed to her decision to abandon her superhero identity in favor of becoming a private investigator. Kilgrave resurfaced multiple times, including an escape during a riot at the Raft and an attack on Luke Cage during the Civil War. His later years saw him targeting groups like the Thunderbolts and the Hoods Gang, and his own children, the Purple Children, eventually turned against him. They used their collective will to force him into attempting suicide, though he survived due to his regenerative abilities. Kilgrave's continual clashes with heroes like Daredevil, the Avengers, and Jessica Jones highlighted his persistent threat. Despite occasional efforts to retire or change his ways, Kilgrave's manipulative nature and the allure of his powers inevitably drew him back into conflict, cementing his legacy as one of the most dangerous and psychologically damaging villains in the Marvel Universe.